waiting. Hello. Okay, cool. Excellent. This is important because the reason, guys, if you want to earn good money in the industry, you're going to find out that AVD will help you along the way. Okay, so what is Azure Virtual Desktop? Well, Azure Virtual Desktop used to be known as Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop. And it's Microsoft's Azure-based platform for virtualizing Windows operating systems and providing virtual desktop itself and applications into the cloud. It's aimed at enterprise customers rather than an individual user. The Azure Portal Management is where we do all our management from. And of course, it's a flexible VDI infrastructure. And not only does it allow us to securely deliver our desktops, it also allows us to deliver our remote apps with maximum control. So I'm going to say that slowly so that this sinks in. You can deploy applications and you can deploy a live desktop. So, and we'll, time permitting, we'll try and do both, the application side. Of course, with our Azure Virtual Desktops, Azure Virtual Desktops are very easy to secure. And it's very easy to secure those devices and provide security because we use, like I said, IAM, Identity Access Management Control. It saves time, it saves on resources. I mean, your team can work anywhere anywhere in the world. All they need is an internet connection. That's it. And then they'll be able to connect. So you can connect to Azure Virtual Desktop using a web browser. You can connect using a client. You can download a Microsoft Remote Desktop client. And let me tell you this, Microsoft Remote Desktop client is not RDP. That's something different. So again, it's very, very flexible and it allows us to really decide what we want to do. We can publish, like I say, a desktop or just an application on its own. Of course, the Microsoft Remote Desktop clients, I mean, talking about the Azure Remote Desktop clients, not Microsoft Windows. This is a different thing, and I'll explain this to you. We can connect either using a desktop client, a web client. If you're running Mac, you can use a Mac client, Android, as well as iOS on iPads. And of course, Azure Virtual Desktop does not support the remote app and desktop connections or the remote desktop MTC client that comes with Windows. If you guys have all used Windows from Windows XP or Windows 2000 all the way through, Microsoft has a built-in remote desktop client for Windows. We do not use that client. We use a special client for that because Azure doesn't support that. And just some best practices to follow. Always give people access based on conditional access. Of course, you can also lock it down and go network location and more. We can enable port access and after flow approval. More importantly, we can what we will work with is, you can do identity access management or third-party permissions to make sure people have access. And of course, access is only granted when you need it. And we can also use what we call JIT, just-in-time access. That person may need access to an application only, like for example, you might have a Word. So when they log on, all they have access to is Word as an application. They don't have a desktop. The application opens itself, and you'll see what I mean shortly. Again, the supported virtual machines. Now, if you look carefully at this PowerPoint slide, we have Windows 11 multi-session, Windows 10 multi-session, and we have those operating systems with Office, excepting for Windows Server 2019 and Server 2022. And you're probably saying to yourself, but hang on, Microsoft do Server 2012 and Server 2016. Where are they? Well, with Microsoft, when it comes to Azure, they always deploy the two latest operating systems. So what are the two latest desktop operating systems on the market, guys? Can anyone tell me what are the two desktop operating systems that Microsoft have on the market? If I ask you, what is a desktop OS? Can anyone tell me? Doesn't matter if you get it wrong.
think of anything.
You know it, you use it every day. Windows 10 and Windows 11. That's a desktop operating system, guys. A server operating system is Microsoft Server 2012 all the way through to 2022. A desktop and a server are two different operating systems, and they behave differently. Again, we have another version of Windows, and that's called multi-session. Multi-session is not available to be downloaded. You cannot go and buy it. It's only available for AVD deployments. And what multi-session does, it allows 20 or 30 people to share the same desktop simultaneously, each having their own profile. I'm going to say that slowly and let that sink in. It allows multiple people to share the same desktop, each having their own profile, and they can work on it as if they had individual desktops. And we will see this in operation as we go through our deployments. Of course, we have host pools, and host pools are a collection of one or more identical VMs. And these are known as session hosts within the Azure environment. And each session host can contain an app group, and you'll need an application group, and they would work on a physical desktop. And there are two types of pools. We have a personal pool and we have pool. A personal pool is where you can assign a session to an individual user. And this is good if you're doing dev testing, or you just want to practice something and test an application. You don't do that in the real world. Most companies would use pool. Pool means not only can we accept sessions from any host, but we can then also specify the number of people that can connect to that desktop or that pool. And this is what we use in the enterprise environments. Everywhere where I have seen Azure in the workplace, when I've deployed Azure, I've used pooled, and that is the one we are going to focus on, because that is the one you will come across in the industry. Then we have another thing in Azure called workspaces. And a workspace is a logical group of application, and each virtual desktop and application must be associated with a workspace. And the workspace is required, especially if it comes to web access, and you'll see why that's important. Of course, application groups are a logical grouping of applications installed on a session host. I know it sounds confusing, but you'll see this as we go through. Of course, we have a remote app, and of course, a remote app is exactly what it says. We can publish an application. It may be an application that we build, and we want to publish it, and we can do that. For example, you all have mobile phones. On your mobile phone, you would have applications, and those applications are running on a web server. So you don't actually access the web server, you're accessing the application. So when you tap on, I don't know, LinkedIn will open up on your phone. When you tap on a game on your phone, the application opens up, not the server. And of course, we can also publish what we call a desktop, and a desktop is the full Windows 10, 11, or server environment. Again, that would depend on your company's needs and their policies. Of course, when we create our AVD environment, we have to set up virtual desktop permissions. And when we do, there are two types of permissions, and these permissions are best set up from the resource group, because as we add people into the AVD pool, if we apply that identity access management at the resource group level, everybody will get those permissions. You don't go and set up identity access for 5,000 people manually. That's insane. What you would do is you put them into a group, and then of course, if there were certain individuals that only needed access to certain applications, you would then create another group and put those users in that group. So you can say this is finance. Finance people can only access the finance applications and payroll, where a normal person, if they try to access that, it'll say, sorry, you don't have permissions. Now, there are two types of permissions in order to get AVD up and running. You have to grant yourself a virtual machine user login, and this allows you to add users to your VM when they log on, like Active Directory. When you log on to a Windows server for the first time, it creates a Windows environment. You press Alt-Control-Delete, you log on, it will create your profile. So that's what the users use. And then the next thing is we need a virtual machine administrator login. Now, I just want to ask you guys a simple question. What's the difference between a standard user and an administrator user? Anyone?
Yeah, administrator user have all privileges and rights on the machine, while a standard user have limited access to just standard usage of the machine.
Perfect, and absolutely right, because when if a user tries to install an application or Office or WinZip or something on a desktop, they don't have permissions. An admin would do that. The reason we do that is the moment you grant people admin permissions, especially in a work environment, it's the wild west. What do I mean? Everybody will go to town and install all sorts of stuff on, and it could do a lot of harm. So hence, IT professionals like yourself would delegate admins who has access to install applications, remove applications, and publish applications. So we're going to do this from the ground up. And the reason I want to do this from the ground up is, I could have set this lab up so you click and everything all works nice and perfect. And you say, oh, well done. I've learned how to create AVD. That wasn't hard. Then you get into the workplace and yeah, you will really not look like a smart person. So I'm going to go ahead and share my other screen now with you so that we can get up and running with Azure. So just give me a second while I grab my screen over here. Okay, so as you can see now, guys, I've got my Azure, I've logged into my Azure portal. So what is the first thing you need to create whenever you're deploying any resource in Azure? Anybody?
Resource group.
Well done. We need to create a resource group. So we know we want to work with the Azure Virtual Desktop environment. So I'm going to go ahead and we can do this together as a group, guys. We're going to go into your resource groups and I want you to create a resource group called AVD. So again, I've gone to resource groups over here, but I can also come into the top over here and type resource groups. So I'm going to click create and I'm going to go ahead and create a resource group and I'll just call this one AVD lab. And you can choose any region where you want to put it in. I mean, you can scroll down and you can choose whatever region takes your fancy. And again, try and choose a region that's closest to you. You know, I've got Australia Central here. You've got Australia Southeast, West US. So you can go ahead and choose any region you want. I'll just go ahead and I'll select West US. I'll select Australia East. Then I'm just going to click review and create. What it's going to do, it's going to go and do a validation, and then I'm going to click create. And that's going to create my resource group. Again, always pay attention to the bell notification at the top here, because that tells you what's going on. And as you can see, my resource group has deployed, and you can see it's deployed it here in the Australia Central, Australia East location. So once we've deployed our resource group, the next thing we need to do is we need to deploy an Azure Virtual Network. So again, we're going to do this from the ground up, because if this session is being recorded, ask our kind host for the video and you'll know how to do this. And this is how you would do it in the real world. So the next thing is we need to create a network, because why? Our company has its own network requirements. So let's go ahead and create a virtual network. So the next thing I need to do is I've got virtual networks over here. Now, if I scroll down, you can see I've got a whole lot of stuff pinned here. And you're probably saying, well, I don't see my stuff. Well, just go to the all services and then go to compute and then select Azure Virtual Desktop. Click on the star so that the star turns blue. Once the star turns blue, you'll see it at the bottom here. So I will go and I will pin something. Let me have a look. What can I pin? I'll go and pin VM applications. I'm going to click on that so the star turns blue. And if I come down to my menu, you can see it's here at the bottom. And if I just hold my mouse, I can drag this up and I can drop this where I want. If I don't want it there, and I say, right, I don't want that stuff there, I can just hover my mouse over the application itself, move over, click on the star so that the star turns white, click anywhere in the pane, and it removes it. So if you want to pin stuff to the star menu, Make sure if you see it's blue, it's pinned. If it's white like that, it's not pinned. So the next thing we need to do is we need to create a virtual network. So I can go to the top here and I can type in VIR and select virtual networks from here, or I can select virtual networks from my menu. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to click virtual networks. I'm going to go ahead and click the create button because you want to create a virtual network. Obviously, I'm going to put it into the AVD lab, and I'm just going to call this one AVD, if I can spell today, AVD VNet lab. I'm just going to call it AVD VNet lab. Do not click review and create. You will land yourself in hot water. Click next on IP addresses. Now, if you notice, this is giving me 65,000 IP addresses because we are using, that's what Azure does. And I mean, that means we can create, hundreds of subnets. And subnets are what allows us to carve up our network for segmentation, security, and many other things. So you can see here, it says subnet default underneath here. So click the default subnet itself, and let's change this, and let's call this one AVD lab subnet, and just click save. It changes the name. The reason we want the name changed, it's going to be easier for us to manage so we can identify which subnet we're on straight away. And you could create subnets. You could create one for sales, one for marketing, one for IT support, one for users. So you can create as many subnets as you want. If you leave it at the default, yes, it'll work, but then you're going to have 10 default subnets. And to try and figure out who's who and what subnet can be a problem. Also, it's very, very unprofessional to do that. So again, it's the small little details that separate you from the next person. So I'm going to go ahead and click next on security. We're going to leave everything as the default. We're not going to change it. I'm going to go next on tags. I'm going to go next to do a review and create. We're not going to tag anything, and I'm going to click create. So now we've created our resource group and we've deployed our virtual network. Once we have deployed, we're all at that stage, we will move forward. So again, guys, I need you to talk to me. Once you've deployed your virtual network and you've deployed your resource group, say, hey, Ryan, it's done, then we can move forward. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. It shouldn't take you more than 3 or 4 minutes to do that. So go ahead and do that, and I'll wait while you do that. Excuse me for drinking. I'm still recovering from a bad chest infection. So I do have a little bit of a cough going on. So I'm just, hopefully it'll go away soon. But yes, I don't, if you see me
well, Pastor.
Have you deployed your virtual network, and have you deployed your resource group?
Yeah, but I said get well faster, bro.
Okay, fantastic. Has everybody done that?
All right, guys, please, you can unmute and say that. If you're not done, you can say let's wait for you, or you drop it on the chat. I'm actually going to be managing the chat while Ryan take over the training, okay? Just drop your chats and I can unmute to tell Ryan about the progress, or you can actually unmute and talk about it, guys. Please.
Okay, I'll give you another 1 minute, and then we are going to move forward because you should have created it. If we get to deploy our VM and you have a problem and you haven't told me about the problem, then I will, too late. Then you just have to watch the video. Right, guys, we should have now deployed our resource group and our virtual network. So what's the next thing we need to deploy? What is our lab? Can anyone tell me what lab are we doing today? Guys, what lab are we doing today? Oh my goodness, nobody wants to talk. We are doing the Azure Virtual Desktop Lab. So the next thing we need to do.
Someone did reply, but on the chat.
Okay, so what we need to do is we need to go ahead now and deploy AVD, not a virtual machine, AVD. Now you can go to the top here and you can type AVD, and you see here we have Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop here. So click on Azure Virtual Desktop. This brings up the Azure Virtual Desktop environment. And this is where we go and start doing stuff. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a host pool. So click Create Host Pool over here, or you can click on Host Pools over here, and you can click Create Host Pool. Click on Host Pools under Manage, click Host Pools, and click Create. We are now going to create a host pool. We're going to put it in to our AVD Lab resource group.